How did one small city on the Italian peninsula conquer the whole ancient world? I'll tell you how. Discipline. They just did it through sheer discipline. I mean, there was strategy and absolute badass warfare. They also had some heroes, but discipline in the Roman army was the one thing that set them apart from all of the barbarians roaming the world at that time. In this video, I'll explore how the Roman legions trained, the grueling drills they endured, and how their diet allowed them to sustain an incredible endurance. But we're here for one reason, so that you get an in on how their training, diet, and mindset can fuel your own regiment. But first, who were they? The Roman army was the backbone of the ancient empire of Rome. Now we know of them because of the amazing artifacts that they provided the modern world. However, their empire technically spans somewhat around 2,000 years, and they did that for a reason. The Roman army conquered vast swaths of land through Europe, Asia, and Africa, creating one of the greatest empires known to mankind and an absolute necessity if you're going to be learning classical literature and history. As a republic for about 700 years or so, Rome ruled through the Senate, and then as an empire, the Imperator ruled. Rome was built on its three foundations: discipline, tradition, and civilization. And even after its heart-rending dissolution, still turned into one of the subsequently greatest empires known to mankind. Once again, the Byzantine Empire ruled in Constantinople. Now we all know that the Eastern Empire became the Byzantine Empire and the Western Empire did become the Church. However, empire or not, it ruled through one reason: their army. Rome grew and forged its path in Europe, Asia, and Africa because of their army. Through mad discipline and training that wasn't really seen at that time, the Roman army not only managed to look death in the face with sheer silence, but managed to defeat their foes using interesting and innovative tactics, strategy, and formation that at that time simply wasn't ever seen. Take the testudo or the tortoise formation, where you'd see an entire Roman wedge place shields all around each other in order to create one of the most formidable and stalwart moving fortresses on the battlefield. Or maybe you're more interested in the triple line formation, one that would rely on tactical retreats throughout the battle in order to regain their stamina and come back at the enemy with full force and endurance. Basically, the Romans understood one thing: preparation above all else. Why do we train? We train to prepare for the real thing. You see, the entire Roman philosophy was basically predicated on the fact that if you trained hard enough, battle just wouldn't compare. Their idea was that training was basically battle but without bloodshed, and battle was warfare with bloodshed, but both were the exact same thing. Their commanders instilled within them a philosophy, one that would mean that they'd actually fear failure in training more than they would in battle, even though this might result in death. Like this, the Roman army, empire, and people knew one thing: Rome wasn't conquered in a day. And it wasn't conquered because of one man. It was conquered due to discipline. You'd want to know that the man next to you has the exact same training that you do, has gone through the exact same things that you have, in order to be able to trust him with your life. The mindset instilled within the greenest recruits all the way to the greatest of veterans, the idea that discipline and order mattered the most. It was so that they could move as one unit during the entire battle, no matter what kind of chaos was thrown at them. As the historian Josephus wrote, their training maneuvers are battles without bloodshed, and their battles are maneuvers with bloodshed. Now this all translated into their physical training, with the key idea being that victory was won through preparation, cohesive battle lines, and discipline, as I've mentioned many times already, and the ability to stay in formation no matter what kind of chaos was thrown at you, or even during long hauls. I might be butchering this name, but Vegetius, a Roman historian of the later Roman Empire, gave us some insight into what the Roman training regime might actually resemble. The Roman training cycle would begin with a full-length march, 20 miles in 5 hours, wearing full gear and marching with extreme pace, making sure that every legionary was up to par and the battle lines wouldn't break. This would be first thing every day, culminating in the building of camp. They had to be able to prepare and be ready at a moment's notice. Now down to actual training, where they build the core foundations for muscles, for example by picking up stones, and dealing with functional weight. They'd primarily train with the sword, the gladius, the perfect short sword, primarily used for thrusting, especially in the battle lines that the Romans were forming at the time. They trained using a wooden replica. This replica would usually weigh about 2 times that of an actual sword, and they train with that on a wooden post or a dummy, with the goal in mind of getting the basic movements and actions down before they ever got into actual battle. They believed using a wooden sword that weighed more would result in faster and more fluid movements in real combat. Most importantly, they understood the need to build a foundation before going into more difficult stuff, for example sparring, which they called armatura. Once the basics of the wooden sword were down, they'd get into this one-on-one sparring with fellow Roman soldiers in order to really test themselves and build their combat prowess in actual maneuvers. And then once they understood how to use the gladius, they'd move on to other weapons. For example, their javelin, the pilum, or a bow and arrow. Again, a wooden version, double the weight against a wooden post or a wooden dummy. The idea was basically the exact same. Now I know what you're thinking, you might be wondering how exactly do you use that at the gym? Well, they had a couple of things that they actually did for functional training in order to get them prepared and face those crazy barbarians that were coming to rip their throats out. First, if the weather and climate permitted it and they were by the coast, they would swim every summer in order to learn how to get through bodies of water. Sometimes retreat on land just wasn't a viable option. Their focus when they actually trained though was explosive power, the ability to go from start to finish in a matter of seconds in order to get to the throat of your enemy faster than they could get to yours. So they would train plyometrics that we know about, for example the long and high jump, but more importantly they'd also train it within the context of what they were doing. A lot of the times they'd be hunkered down behind their shields, and they'd have to be able to strike at a moment's notice. So they would practice, for example, holding the shield in front of them, and then while hunkered down, they'd open up their defenses and attack from a lowered position, implementing that explosive force in a real way. The Roman legions had a methodology to their training. First, they made sure they were conditioned, able to last through the grueling training or battles that they were going to go through. Then they had to work through the most simple to the most advanced actions, burning it into their muscle memory before they ever actually got to use it. Finally, armatura, being able to use it and develop their skills against an actual opponent. All Roman legionaries had to be up to the commander's super high standards, and if they were, they'd get rewarded. For example, they might be given more rations, they might be given better rations, higher quality wine, you name it, and if they weren't, they'd get reprimanded. Half rations, which funnily enough could mean instead of getting wheat, they'd get barley, which they considered essentially the poor man's bread. Their meals, as with a lot of warriors, were very simple and Spartan-like. What do I mean by that? Carbs were extremely prevalent. One, they were always around, easy to get, far easier than having to butcher your own animal. And two, they provide the energy you need for that full day's worth of training. See, carbs aren't your enemy unless you're eating too many of them and they're ultra processed. They especially aren't your enemy when you're marching 20 miles a day, followed by sparring and combat drills. The legions would prepare their food in a grouply fashion so that they could work better and understand each other better during battle. They would, for example, grind down their own wheat and make their own bread. And they were also given rations of meats, but they weren't particularly fond of beef the way we are in today's age. They preferred pork and bacon sliders, for example. But lentils and cheese were quite prevalent at the same time. Now, long marches obviously need to be fueled, and any army needs an abundance of water. However, water can spoil if not contained in the right way. So they would add vinegar, creating something called posca, a refreshing, slightly sour and practical drink that got them through the day and was great to make because when wine spoils, it turns into vinegar. So what other better way to use it? Their meals were simple and effective, just like they should be. Now for the reason that you're here. These free next exercises are perfect for getting you battle ready, even though you might not be cutting off any heads anytime soon. You want to lose weight, you want to build endurance? Weighted marches is the way to go. Load a backpack with 20 to 30% of your weight and then go on a 3 to 5 mile hike. Now it can be longer based on your abilities, but start off with just this. Just walk, getting you into that perfect yellow zone in order to burn fat and avoid burning any unnecessary muscle. Getting to that yellow zone of heartbeats would also get the body to burn fat instead of carbs for energy, getting you lean and shredded as fast as possible. Shield drills and explosive actions from a lowered position will build your short fiber muscles in order to get you combat ready. But you might be asking, what does this look like? Take a plate and simply lift it in front of you a couple of times. Do some lunges with that. Incorporate explosive lunges with that. Grab a kettlebell, jump squats, you get the gist. And for third, javelin throws, or at least that's what we're simulating. Grab a medicine ball and slam that bastard against that wall. Or, like I might do, against the ground at the very least. The Roman legion was a force of nature. I think one of the things that most inspire me about them have to be this one story. Whereas normal men, barbarians would run into battle shouting and screaming in order to get all of the tension out of their bones and into the fight, hopefully also scaring the enemy. The Romans though, they knew of a tactic that would far surpass this. They stood dead silent, waiting for the enemy to come at them, creating this absolutely uncanny effect on the barbarians, stopping them in their tracks and allowing the Romans to absolutely slaughter them. Their entire training regimen, while not special, was disciplined and methodical. It had the science of their time backing them. Now if you find order interesting, how about some chaos? Check out the gladiators. If you enjoyed the video, like and subscribe, and keep that notification bell on so that you can see when my videos are uploaded. I try to upload every Thursday, but right now I'm playing between 1 video a week or 2 videos a week. I'm still yet to decide. And in the comments below, let me know some information that I might have missed, or any warriors through fantasy or history that you'd like me to break down next. I'll see you next time.